Well, hello, everybody, and good evening. Today's date is November 15th, 2025. First of all, I actually wanted to say thank you and welcome again for dialing in and tuning in to another great episode. Today is about 7:02 in the evening, and man, do I got a lot to share with everybody tonight. So if you are listening to this or getting ready for bed or on the drive, just turn up the audio. Let's relax. Let's sit back and actually enjoy a conversation about everything that went on. So for some of you that are first timers listening in, and the purpose of this show is to kind of give a parent's perspective, a dad's perspective of what I see from my vision, and it might resonate with you. I notice that a lot of people feel a certain way about things, but they're not the best communicators as far as how they want to say certain things, right? Because they're always conscious and aware of maybe hurting somebody's feelings. And I think we're reaching a point in society where I think we need to shoot from the hip, kind of forget what or who we are hurting and just kind of speak our minds, because honestly, we are on borrowed time on this planet, and we definitely want to hear or have our voices heard, because you never know. There might be somebody out there listening, like you, for example, that's listening to this podcast and is probably like, damn, I can relate to that guy and what he's going through. So with that being said, let's dive in, right? So today is Saturday. So tomorrow, the San Francisco 49ers will be playing the Arizona Cardinals. And as many of you listeners out there know, I'm a very big avid fan of the SF 49ers, and their season is kind of weird. Supposedly tomorrow, I think we got Brock Purdy back. I think we got Pearsall back, which is the wide receiver. Huff, which is the defensive end, I believe, for the Niners. And a lot of the impact players are finally coming back. They're finally resting Mac Jones, even though he's done a phenomenal job. The guy needs all the kudos on the planet, and he earned his money. He earned his paycheck because the guy kept us afloat. But tomorrow's game is against the Arizona Cardinals, so we will see how that goes, because according to Pro Football Focus, they should have a decent chance. So the San Francisco 49ers, in comparison to the Arizona Cardinals, are about a 3.5 point favorite, which means that we should beat the team by a touchdown. Their overall ranking is 23rd in the NFL. We are ranked 11th in power rankings. The defense, however, they're ranked 16th. We are ranked 26th. So technically speaking, they have a better defense than we do. But on the offensive side, we are 13th. They are 19th. So how that disparity is broken up and what impacts it and what actually matters, I don't know. I'm not a PFF guy, so I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you, but all I can tell you is that we are supposed to win tomorrow. That's just the way it goes. The over-under is about 48.5. So, Vegas is expecting to be like a 30-20 game, something like that, or a 28-20 game by a touchdown, things like that. Sometimes these games get close when they come close to garbage time. They usually make up for it. But we shall see. I mean, the Niners are sitting at 6-4. The Cardinals are 3-6. Against the spread, the Niners are 5-5. The Cardinals are 5-4. So technically speaking, the Niners 50-50, man. It's really a difficult time to really read it, but we'll see. The other thing I wanted to talk about was today's games, man. Whew. So as some of you know, my daughter plays competitive soccer. And today we did the first batch of State Cup games. We had done the qualifiers already. We had done those, and we did phenomenal in those. Today was the very big tourney. And we won the first game. We beat a team that we have not beaten in about 3 seasons. We finally beat them. We finally got over the hump with a 1-0 victory. We were down one winger, which, man, if we just had her on today's second game, man, I think we would have made a bigger impact. But we came across a team And I'm not sure if some of you know how competitive soccer is broken down, but depending on the league that you're in, there are different tiers, right? There is ECNL, there is gold level, there is silver, there's bronze, there's copper, and then there's recreational soccer, right? So typically speaking, the way the tournaments go, depending on your score, you get placed on certain brackets based on your point differential. So even though you might be a gold level team, because you had a really bad performance against other people, other teams in your division, you get dropped down to a silver level. And we, being a silver team, we did phenomenal, I think a little bit too well. And we played, I think about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we played against a team out of Manteca, and the winner of that game was going to be placed in the gold bracket, which we didn't want because our team was still under development. We had I think we had like 5 or 6 players that came from recreational. Actually, no, they came from copper level and they were bumped up to silver. So they completely skipped bronze and went straight there. And those girls played their butt off. Definitely the aggressiveness was there. The physical attributes is there. The athleticism was there. The skill is not quite there, but their want and their grit, definitely there. So it made for a much better team than we've had previous seasons. Now, how that translates to the tournament, you just don't know what you're going to get in relation to the style of play. The girls going to perform well? Are we going to mesh well or compete well against other teams that have probably been together for a much longer period of time? That was a big question mark. The girls delivered. Being down the main winger, one of our main pieces being down, I think the girls really held it down against that team that we played against, and we won 1-0. So today's game at 2 o'clock in the afternoon was supposed to be for the winner would go on to the semifinals on a different weekend, and the winner of that will go on to the finals. So it would be 2 more games. So we would have to play one game another weekend. And then the winner of that would go on to the finals on a separate weekend or on the same weekend. We just don't know. We thought we had a shot. I think the team that we were facing today, I think we've beaten teams that have been hell of a lot better than the one we played. And unfortunately, we just didn't perform. I mean, you're going to run into that, right? Where the girls are either going to be into it, they're going to want it, or they're not. It's a toss-up at that point that you really don't know what you're going to get. And that's why they play the games, right? However, that team was a gold level team. Like I mentioned earlier, they were dropped down to a silver. So that's what we played. And it was absolutely exciting to watch. I think the girls should have won this game. I think the opportunities were there. However, some of our girls were just not in it. The defense had some lapses. Up front, we weren't really creating space or making plays to make scoring opportunities until the very end. And we made it interesting for a brief moment, and then we just had another defensive lapse where people were caught out of position and they scored, and the final score was 1-3. My daughter was a little bit heartbroken, obviously, was a little bit upset about it, but, it is what it is. In competitive sports, it sucks. Sometimes you actually want to be out there and get out there and play for these kids because you feel like, the competitive drive within you wants to go ahead and do it and be out there and perform, but that's just not the way it goes, right? You got to let them develop. And that touches on the first subject that I want to touch on. I'm noticing a little bit of a trend in that in competitive sports, it's really, I think there's certain spots in competitive sports where the parents change completely. What I mean by that is that the parents' attitude towards the games change. There's more pressure on the player to perform better. There is a much higher level of expectation of what the results are going to be. And sometimes I think that we do a really bad job of motivating these kids the right way. And today, I think I saw a good example of what maybe we should do more. And that is, when we know that our child is not performing well, regardless of the age level, we should still feel comfortable and able to express that frustration to let our child know that they're underperforming. And I understand that sometimes it's the coach's responsibility to delegate to and speak to these players so they can perform at the level that they're supposed to. But I think that sometimes parents allow that too much. And I think there needs to be a balance in which the parents need to also put in their 2 cents of what's expected and what the player should be doing. And I don't think that happens enough. I think a lot of the parents just kind of show up, throw their kid out there and leave it up to the coach. And I don't think that's the way it should be. I think that as parents, I think also we need to come to terms and have an understanding that maybe our kid is just not built for certain sports. Just because your kid is athletic does not mean they're going to be a soccer player. Just because your kid is fast does not mean they're going to be a great athlete. Sometimes it just depends on the child and how they take to the certain sport. And there is certain players that I've seen that want it, but are not willing to put in the work to get it. And when they perform against other teams that want it more, they just crumble. They don't push through. They don't play through the finish line. Instead, they see the finish line, they know they're going to lose, and they stop running. That is not a good attitude to have. And I'm trying to navigate that and trying to have that balance with my child, that while it's okay for you to fail, I still want you to show effort through the entire process. And as the kids are getting older, I'm trying to navigate through this. And I don't know if some of you parents that are out there listening or teachers, I don't know if you guys run into the same thing where you see students and you see players and you even some of your kids that you see that they have this God-given ability to be much better, but they just ease off and take their foot off the pedal. Now, if that's just drive, if that's just because they just don't want it, I don't know. I mean, there's no magic wand or an instructional manual with these kids at all. There isn't. So it's a little frustrating. But that was this weekend's activities. And then the other thing too is like now we're planning my daughter's quinceañera, which is a celebration of life, not a life, but a celebration of womanhood in the land community. And again, this is like an old school way of celebrating your daughter's 15 years birthday. And it's supposed to be a coming of age celebration of your daughter, where you do this big old thing that's damn near almost a wedding, and you celebrate her life, you celebrate her accomplishments, and you do this big old shindig, this big old festivities specifically for her. But dude, do I tell you that some of this shit though is honestly very freaking expensive? It's ridiculous. It's nuts. I mean, we're talking about from venues to DJs to the silverware to everything else in between. I mean, my goddaughter right now, we're getting ready to celebrate her quinceañera here at my house. And that's a challenge in itself. And I see what her mom is going through. And it's creating memories at the same time. Some of this stuff, I don't think the kids will understand until they get older, when they realize that shit, my mom did all this, my madrina did all this stuff for us. I mean, it's something that I really hope that it resonates. And I know that it's something that I wish I would have enjoyed growing up, if somebody had taken a time and investment to really do something nice for me, apart from my parents. And if some of you are blessed to have that type of support system, you are a unicorn, because that doesn't exist with everybody. And so if you're listening to this right now and you are in your 20s, just count your blessings if you have it. If you don't have it, you might have it. You're just not looking for it, or you're not listening. And I think I brought this up before. I think that I mentioned to everybody on the podcast that I'm part of this chat with my nephews and my older cousin. And we started talking about, just shenanigans and jokes and sports and things like that. And it's so many different topics because, again, our age groups are very, very diverse. We're talking about, we have people in their teens and late teens. We have people in their early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, early 30s, early 40s, early 50s, and everything else in between. So you can only imagine the type of topics that we go through are very different. And that kind of ties into this next subject that I want to discuss. So when I was talking to my nephews and talking to people and talking to my sister-in-law and everything else in between, the perception in some of the like the really controversial topics, such as religion and political views, it's so different. And I think that we as a society, and even as parents, or even as adults, we do a really shitty job of looking at the actual context of the controversy rather than painting everything with a broad brush. And I wanted to take a moment to kind of go on these three particular scenarios and situations that have happened and use them as an example. And again, mind you, and fair warning, some of this stuff might trigger you. So if you are anti, just being stubborn as hell and not wanting to listen, then this is probably not for you. But if you are wanting to be receptive and engage and listen to a different point of view, I'll give you time. So here's the first one. And do you guys remember the George Floyd situation that happened back in 2020? So if you guys don't know, George Floyd was born on October 14th, 1973 in North Carolina. He passed away under police custody in May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And George Floyd had a very troubled past. He had a very difficult upbringing. He made a lot of bad choices. I'll leave it there because I don't want to throw shade on the guy without really knowing his history. And that's something that I think a lot of people really forget, is like, you have to ask questions as to how that person ended up there in the first place. And my guy had a great history. Now, as far as him being a great person, I don't know. As far as what led him to make bad decisions, I don't know. But what I do know is that this particular day, on May 25th, Mr. George Floyd decided to go with some of his bad influences, I like to say, made bad decisions. He got caught with a counterfeit $20 bill. The people at the shop realized that it was a counterfeit. They immediately called the police, which is what you're supposed to do. Basically, they said, hey, I have this gentleman here who's trying to pay for these groceries and this material with a counterfeit bill. Now, counterfeit bills are considered a felony because you are not supposed to do that. Common sense. Now, if you're doing this out of desperation or plain and simply because you think you can get away with it, those are two different things. But the gentleman went to the cashier, he paid for it, got caught, and he sat in his car and did his thing. So like I mentioned before, so on May 25th, 2020, like I said, after he paid for the counterfeit bill, the cashier basically looked at the item and said, you know what, I'm going to call the cops because obviously this gentleman is doing something inappropriate, which is what you're supposed to do as a good standing citizen. And at the same time, you're a store, you're getting defrauded by somebody paying with fake bills. So Mr. George Floyd and his group of people that was with him are in his vehicle, and they proceed to just kind of hang out. And the cops, fortunately, they arrive on site. And however, when they confront Mr. George Floyd, the situation escalates to the point where basically he denies having the counterfeit bill, even though there is a video of him literally paying for the material with a counterfeit bill. He denies it and says that, no, it wasn't mine, it was somebody else's, I came across it, just sort of deflecting. However, which a lot of people don't know, is that Mr. George Floyd had a very, very bad and already had a history of arrests, drug use, theft, and other things, other bad choices prior to this. So as law enforcement, when you're running a person's background and you see all this stuff in the rap sheet, it automatically makes you rethink how you're going to approach this situation. Because me instinctively, if I'm running a police report on that person and I don't see nothing on that screen, they come back clean, okay. The probability of this person acting out and doing something that they're not supposed to do are very low. Now, however, if you see somebody who has a very massive rap sheet, you rethink things. You tend to be a little bit more apprehensive, a little bit more guarded, and you might treat the situation a little bit better. And that's exactly what happened with the police officers in this situation. So the police officers proceeded to confront and ask Mr. Floyd questions. Hey, can I have your ID and this and that? This is the situation. The moral of the story is that George Floyd was defending his case. The police was not believing it. They were not seeing eye to eye. They proceeded to pull him out of the vehicle by force because he was not willing to get out of the car. And the situation escalated to the point where he started to resist arrest. And then now, since you're like in the middle of Minneapolis, where it's kind of a really problematic area, they throw him on the ground. They try to arrest him. He's pleading. There's a crowd gathering around him, which doesn't make that shit any better. The cops are looking at their situation like, shit, it's about to go down at this spot. I'm either going to get shot, stabbed, killed, or something like that, or somebody's going to come in and do something stupid because of this gentleman right here. So the police officers ask for backup. They proceed to go ahead and keep Mr. George Floyd down. One of the gentlemen puts him down and he puts his knee on the back of his neck, restricting his air. Now, Mr. George Floyd, who already had a history of breathing issues because of his use of other drugs and paraphernalia, again, he didn't make the best choices, right? And this is what we're dealing with. Now, because he never made the good choices, the cops saw him a certain way, they put him down, they slammed him down, and they used excessive force. When they put the knee in the gentleman's back of his neck, he was pleading for them to go ahead and let him free because he couldn't breathe. Everybody starts screaming around him. Everybody starts yelling. Now, there's a lot of detainees that use these strategies of they're hurting me, you're hurting me, you're hurting me, just so the cop can get off of him. Now, the police officer, however, was so focused on his surroundings that he forgot his training, and so did his partner. And they both proceeded to just keep the knee on the back of this gentleman's neck, even though he was pleading for air, pleading for air, pleading for air. People start recording, they start filming, the cops, it just kept on getting worse and worse and worse and worse until the gentleman basically passes out. And then they start performing CPR. And they try to revive him because then they realize that, damn, he was actually asking, he really couldn't breathe. Yeah, by then it was too late, buddy. Now the crowd gets even worse because they literally saw this man literally get killed right in front of them. They're recording this whole situation. The shit escalates even more, and the gentleman passes away. Now, during this whole entire scenario that I just read to you, I have not told you anything about this gentleman's nationality. I have not told you anything about the nationality of the police officers involved or the area in particular where they were at, because I wanted to tell you about what actually happened. Okay? There was a use of excessive force by the police, which was valid. They didn't follow protocol. They didn't secure the area prior to the arrest. They didn't call and wait for backup before I got there when they knew the situation was going to get a little bit squirrely, and the gentleman passed away. Now, this is where the media and everybody else spend it. The first thing that is shown on video is, a black man was killed by a white police officer that sparked the protests. Why the fuck does it have to be about race? Why does it have to be about race? Why? Why can we not just simply admit to the fact that the police officer just didn't use the right judgment? They're going to pay for it. They're going to go to jail. They're going to get either manslaughter. There's going to be a civil suit, and that family of Mr. George Floyd will be compensated very, very much. But that didn't happen. Instead, we had the introduction of the Black Lives Matter movement, the BLM movement. Then you had these pastors, then you had Louis Farrakhan, all these folks from the extreme side of race made it about race, and that was not the damn case. And that is my point. Now, they've made murals about the gentleman, about him passing away, about everything that he's done, and people have come back and said, why are we celebrating this gentleman who made so many bad decisions? And why aren't we making it about what was done and by who? Not the cop. We're not talking about his ethnicity. They violated protocol. Why did they violate protocol? Was it because they felt threatened because he was of African American descent? Probably. But why does that have to be the immediate go-to? Why do we immediately go to divide rather than try to get to the actual facts of what the hell really happened and why? And that's what I think that society does as a whole, and it does not do a good job. Now, I get it, and I'm not naive to the notion that people don't get pulled over for the dumbest shit by some stupid ass fucking cop that has a badge, and all of a sudden he decides to go ahead and push his narrative and hurt people. That does happen. It does exist. But not every case is like that. And we have to be open to the fact that not every single case is like that. And we cannot go ahead and throw shade at Mr. George Floyd because of his past transgressions. Why are we judging him and basically unrecognizing him as a human being that he is also entitled to live, and just plain and simply because of his choices that he's made before? Now, I get it. Some of those choices might be utterly egregious, where he definitely needs to be behind bars, and there's folks like that. But in this case, who are we to be judge and jury in that circumstance? For a counterfeit bill, I mean, we have to be mindful and wary of what the hell we're fucking doing, right? Like, why am I arresting you? First of all, am I arresting you because you did something inappropriate to somebody? You assaulted someone, like caused bodily harm to someone else? Or are you getting arrested plain and simply because you're a pickpocket? And because of that, I'm going to fucking kill you. That's just stupid. It's just fucking dumb. But a lot of people are literally like, no, it was racist. And other people are on the other side like, no, he was a fentanyl user and this and that. Again, it's this whole media-driven narrative that causes such a horrible divide. And it's one of the reasons why I really don't agree with much of what media puts out there, because a lot of it is really one-sided, really biased to target one specific audience that's all they want to hear. If you're a Fox News person, all you're going to want to hear is the Fox News narrative, whatever that is. If you are an MSNBC person or a CNN person, you're going to want to listen to that particular narrative, because that is what we are comfortable with, and that gives validity to our thought process. It might be asinine, it might be biased, it might be bigotry, whatever the fuck you want to call it, but that is our safe spot. That is what we call our safe zone. And that's fine if you do that, but you also have to be mindful and understanding and teach your kids the other side as well. And let me give you a second scenario. Mr. Colin Kaepernick. Yeah, I know a lot of you probably going to recognize this person. Mr. Colin Kaepernick was a quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. He had a really good first season, took the 49ers to the Super Bowl, came back a second season, was not as successful, and he struggled a bit. On one particular day, on a Friday night, Mr. Colin Kaepernick, by this time he was wearing an afro haircut, afro style, he decided to knee and not stand up for the national anthem. And a lot of people were really upset about it, and they questioned him and questioned his coach at that time, Chip Kelly. So, Mr. Colin Kaepernick, at the first opportunity that he was given by the media, he said, and I quote, "I'm not going to stand up to show pride in the flag or for a country that oppresses black people and people of color. To me, this is bigger than the football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the street and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder." So, his sign and his show of prejudice and protest was basically him not standing for the flag, which, again, because we are all free citizens, he has every right to do that, and he has freedom of religion to express himself. He has a right as a citizen, and it's not the right of the coach to tell him what to do and what not to do. It's entirely at his discretion. Now, again, his complaint and his protest was about that specific thing. It was to bring and shed light to what he perceived as a social injustice against minorities by those select individuals, not all, but by certain individuals and certain government programs that like to treat certain minorities a specific way. Now, what he was trying to do was bring light to some of these cases. He wanted to use his celebrity status to bring light to that, so people would ask, well, Colin, what scenarios specifically you're asking about? And I'm sure he would have spoken on multiple subjects, multiple cases in which there was proof and validity that some of the stuff happened. However, the media did not report it that way. The key things that came out of all this was the gentleman did not stand for the national anthem. It's anti-patriotic, anti-military, anti-law enforcement, anti-fire department. Mind you, we had just gone through the whole 9/11 thing, so people were still a little extra sensitive on anything pertaining to public help, like, for example, EMTs, firefighters, police officers, law enforcement. So when you see a gentleman come out the fucking woodwork and not stand for our national anthem, mind you, when the society at this moment in time is already very, very, very divided already because of the terrorist acts that took place on 9/11 and the ethnicities and the religions of these individuals, it's already created a divide that it's still trying to recover. And then here you have Mr. Colin Kaepernick, in their eyes and their perception, spitting on the flag, therefore unvalidating them and completely going against anything that's patriotic. His entire opinion and view had nothing to do with those of law enforcement, fire departments, etc. His thing was to bring light to specific cases that there are social people, there is departments and districts out there who use their badge for the wrong reasons. But they didn't make it about that. They made it about him. He chose not to stand for the anthem, so therefore he is a SOB and blah, blah, blah. They put him through the woodwork. Now, in the beginning, I initially felt bad for the guy because I'm like, fuck, dude, I think people are missing the point. That's not what he wanted to do. However, Mr. Colin Kaepernick also has not done himself any services because he's done a really shitty job of driving the narrative. Like, was he doing this plain and simply because he just wanted to get a status that way? Was he trying to get attention or a sponsor that way? Because I'll tell you what, Mr. Colin Kaepernick dropped off the NFL shortly thereafter. No team would sign him. You could say he was blackballed, or you can say that he was just shunned to the side because no team wanted to mess with him. No, they didn't, because they didn't want that controversy on their team. So what did he do? He hired personal trainers. He hired videographers to basically record him throwing the ball around. So he would look amazing on video and say, hey, I can still play football. But however, I won't play for nothing less than a starting job, and I won't play for nothing less than $7 million a year. Those are very, very solid specifics. You see how weird and why his case went to shit? You started off on a just and valid topic, and you go by the fucking wayside, and you change your whole narrative, and now you make it about you. So which is it? Now a lot of people are calling into question, like, yo, dude, am I following the right person? Am I giving this guy all this money, all this shit, and he's not even about that though? He just wants a paycheck? I mean, that's pretty fucked up. And when I talk on these topics, even with my family, a lot of them are very one-sided, especially the younger ones in particular. The George Floyd one is a very big trigger, because in one of my nephews in particular, he speaks on George Floyd's name in a very, very negative manner. And in the chat, a lot of people get really pissed off because, again, I go back to the point, what narrative are you following? Because obviously the one that you're following is the one that's being handed to you. So you're not really doing your research. You're not really doing that. You're following reels and maybe a few podcasts here and there, but you're not really doing your due diligence on the back end to really ask for validation if the stuff that's being said is actually legit. That's a very big problem, because that's just a snippet. That's just an example of what's really going on in middle America. And that's where we as parents, that's where the whole engagement process is. That's where you talking to your kid and having those conversations with them and navigating them through this whole thing in a very open perspective is key, not just one. And I'm not sure if it's a cultural thing, but I see this more often where either we're trying to overcorrect and we're trying to fall in line with the narrative that society wants our kids to be, and we lose ourselves in that shit because we don't want to ruffle feathers, when in reality, I think we should do the opposite. I think that we should be able to tell your child exactly how things are and what happens and not sugarcoat stuff. And this goes back to the whole comp soccer thing. If you're going to use the same ideology where you're going to be shielding your child from certain scenarios and perspectives or certain challenges because you don't want them to go through the same shit that you went through, then I think you're setting your kid up for failure in the long run. In the short term, they're going to do great because you're going to be right there with them every step of the way, shielding them from whatever comes their way. But what about when you're not there? God forbid anything happens to you, these kids are not going to be able to navigate through society if it doesn't fall, or if they don't fall within that narrative. They're going to be manipulated and taken advantage of. That's not a good look, and that's not society right now. It's not. Like, I'll give you another one, and this was a really controversial one, but I'm going to say it anyway because honestly, it needs to be said. Whatever sexual preference you are, if you're identify as pronouns him, he, she, her, it, transgender, gay, straight, or whatever, or bi, whatever that is, while it is your job to educate and bring light to society that you do exist and that you do matter and that you do have a voice and that you do have your rights and entitled to every single one of them. Yes, you do. You have to be extra mindful of how you convey your position. And I think that some folks, not all, in the LBGT community do a really shitty job of understanding and reading the room. And instead of helping your cause, you're hurting it. And I'll give you a few. So just recently, the Olympic Commission has made it official, and they have banned any sort of transgender athlete in sports, period. If you're a male, if you're a born male, regardless of what transitions you have gone through, if that is your genetic makeup, you cannot participate in a women's sport. And vice versa. If you're a woman and born a woman, you cannot participate in any man's sport. They're separated into two classes, and that's it. And the reason for that is because lately I think there's been a big uptick in a lot of the transgender athlete that's trying to participate in sports because they love sports, because, I mean, who doesn't, right? I think you had a few playing volleyball in some colleges where some universities chose not to play against that specific team because they were completely against it, because they felt that that particular person was overpowering the ball, spiking the ball too much or too hard. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to think about it. You have a genetic and male makeup, which is specifically wired to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more, with more kick to it, regardless of whatever processes you take or you ingest to make yourself more feminine. You're still a man at the end of the day. And some folks didn't deem it fair. So, okay, so that's gone by the wayside. Another one was another scenario in which there was one Olympic athlete who just recently won gold I believe in Paris, in boxing. And they come to find out that the gentleman was either a woman or they were born with both sexes, with both parts, which does happen. It's very rare, but it does happen. He was born with a very genetic condition that did not allow him to be a regular male. So he's lived his life and portrayed his life as a female. However, his genetic makeup is male. He went to boxing, destroyed everybody in the Olympics, and you guys can Google him or her, and you guys can see for yourself. That, to me, is not right. Then you have sprinters, people doing pole vault, people doing swimming, where they were born male, they're doing female sports. That, like, basically, more of the story is that it's very bad propaganda to do that. And I don't think society at this moment in time in 2025 is ready for any of that. Because you have people like, there's a particular podcaster out there, a vlogger, who I won't mention their name because I don't want them to have fame, because I really don't like the person. This individual records themselves going to restaurants and vlogging and criticizing food, etc. But the manner that they speak to people and they approach them, they are easily triggered when they are told, "Here, ma'am, here's your check." And that's an immediate trigger for this individual, where they're recording and they go off with this whole rant of, you know what, I feel like you're violating my rights. I'm not a man, I'm a woman. Even though if you see the video, you can clearly see it's a man. I don't care how many surgeries the gentleman has had. To me, when you look at him, that's a woman, right? I mean, that's not a woman, that's a man. So, but there's this big old, he makes multiple videos basically of these scenarios in which people are simply just being nice to him and saying, "Hey, here's your check, sir." Just being polite. "No, don't call me that, blah, 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 blah." And then it turns into a big old fucking fiasco. Then that wasn't it. This particular blogger then goes over to Disneyland, a kid's park, by himself. To Disneyland by himself, recording himself and taking photos of himself inside girls' bathrooms. If there is not major fucking triggers for you guys on that last sentence of taking selfies inside a women's bathroom when you are literally a man, because to this date, that person has not validated, they have not confirmed or denied that they've gone through the process of removing the male part and going through the transition. So if they do in fact still have the equipment and they are inside these bathrooms where little girls are getting dressed, they're going to bathrooms with their grandma and their mom, that shouldn't happen, let alone taking pictures or selfies with these people that are not even giving you permission to use their likeness or image in the fucking bathroom. I mean, if you guys don't think there's nothing wrong with that, then I don't know what to tell you. But to me, that's a major red flag. That shit shouldn't be fucking happening. And it's one of the reasons why now even my wife and my daughters now are very conscious of like, hey, if you go in the bathroom and you don't feel comfortable because somebody, you know, doesn't look that way, but because if somebody's acting or doing something inappropriate in the bathroom, you can turn around and leave. You don't have to hang around. And now I'm getting to the point where when I'm taking my daughters, I go in the bathroom in first. When if it's just a single stall, like one of those regional bathrooms, like the ones off of rest areas. If it's a restroom and it's empty, I go in there first and check all the stalls before my daughters go in. Because I want to make sure that there's nobody in there prior to them going inside. Because there's way too many fucking weirdos out there. But that's not all. So this particular gentleman not only has done this, now he's stepping it up now even more. Now he has a YouTube channel catered to kids between the age of toddlers up until 6 years old. He has a channel on YouTube where basically he explains what a transgender person is. How to identify it, how to treat them, how to act around them, etc. Again, at 4 or 5 years old, kids should only be wary of their fucking alphabet, colors, playing with other kids, and that's it. There should be no fucking reason at all, and pardon my French, that a damn child should have any inkling in regards to sexuality, what the fuck to identify as, and how to communicate it. Do not impose your views and how you want society to perceive you on a fucking child. It is not your job to do that. It is the parents' job to tell those kids if they are ready or if they want to, how to navigate through life and understanding your circumstances. Like, for example, like my sister-in-law, you know, she is homosexual, she's gay, and my kids know that their auntie is, and they're completely okay. Not once have they ever felt uncomfortable, made her feel uncomfortable. My sister-in-law has done phenomenal as far as I am what I am, and if you care to know what I am, then ask me the question. And my kids are savvy enough that they already figured it out, and they know. And it's okay. There's no judgment. There's no pointing fingers. I'm not bashing anybody for their choices, but I do bash individuals like this particular fucking blogger that goes about it the wrong way. And it's folks like that really piss on any progress that community has had so far into making them valid. And that's not fair to that community, because this person is doing that group of folks a disservice, because all you're doing is causing controversy the wrong way, and now people are going to get pissed off at this fucking dumbass, and I'm going to call him that, and they're going to see another individual who has nothing to do with the whole situation, and they're going to automatically put them in the same fucking category. They're going to put them in the same box. And the stereotype, and this goes back to the way society thinks. If you see somebody from one particular culture and ethnicity doing one particular act, odds are a child or an adult will immediately relate that situation to that ethnicity. Tacos, burritos, you already have your ethnicity in your mind. Barbecue, watermelon, you already have that in your mind. Bad drivers, you already have that in your mind. If you don't, you're doing phenomenal. But if you do, you are doing exactly what society wants you to do. You're following that. You're following that narrative that we are trying so hard to break from. And we need to teach our kids not to see color, not to see race, and not to see fucking sexual preferences, but to use their common sense of what's right and what's wrong. And I'll close the loop and I'll circle back to the George Floyd situation. I never once mentioned a gentleman's ethnicity until I told it to you. The situation was very simple. Gentlemen, counterfeit money, police show up, they use excessive force, the gentleman dies. That should have been it. Second scenario, quarterback, NFL team, protest against the flag, against the anthem. Why? Because he wants to call to action in all these ridiculous cases that have happened against these ethnicities, and these are the cases. Oh, really? Let me know more about the case. I want to know more. Why aren't we investigating enough to find out and get to the culprits, and why aren't they in jail? That should have been it. This gentleman over here getting at restaurants. Restaurants have the right to reserve service to anyone. As a server or as a waiter or waitress, you have every right to see this gentleman coming through and be like, sorry, sir, I don't feel comfortable serving you. Not because of what you look like, but plain and simply because you're going to make this a topic about yourself and move on. He can record all the videos he fucking wants, but you don't have to engage. Just how sometimes people are like, oh, identify as. Okay, that's great that you identify as whatever you want to identify. What are you, though? Because you can only be two things. X chromosome or Y chromosome. That's my job as society to identify you as that. But if you want me to relate to you or call you something different, that is your request that I do not have to follow. And the fact that we impose our will, and sometimes those cultures impose their will on everybody, you have to call me this, call me that, it's a damn shame. Because it's causing hell of a lot more confusion to our kids. And it shouldn't be that way. And I see it, and when I talk to my nephews, I see their narratives, I see their positions, I see where they're thinking from, and sometimes we have to do better on our end and teach these kids that that's not okay. It's okay for you to ask questions. But as I'm getting older, I see this. And as parents, as we are getting older, we also have to do better of opening our kids' eyes to different scenarios and different situations that do exist. Rejection exists in society. Team building exists in society. The 6-7 bullshit exists in society. People celebrate Halloween. Yes, they do in society. People do stupid shit in society. That's great. If you want to protect your child from all these things that are going to happen, that's great. If you want to shield them, that's great. But explain to them why it is that you don't want them to partake in these things, why you don't want them to say certain things. What does it mean to you? What does it resonate with you? Are we really honestly doing that? I don't think we are. I think we are so in love with our narrative, our point in making our kids do what we want them to do, that we fail at explaining to them why we're asking them that. And then the other thing, baptism, not unbaptized. It doesn't matter. You're a human being at the end of the day. And if you do want to get baptized, whatever it is, whatever religion, it's your choice. You're not less of a human being if you haven't had one. And you're not even a better human being if you did. But let's stop falling into these narratives. Let's stop pigeon-toeing ourselves and our children into one way of thinking. Let's give them all the information we can possibly give them and have them draw the picture of what they want to be. But shielding our kids so much and protecting them so much, it only hinders their progress and development. It doesn't make them stronger. It doesn't make them better. It makes them reliant and dependent on you. And then you're going to sit there and wonder, oh, why hasn't my kid figured it out? Because of you. Look in the fucking mirror. Because of you. So now again, I'm not saying that, hey, let's ignore our fucking kids and have them figure it the fuck out. No, that's us. That's what we did. Some of us that had to basically grow up on our own, make our own decisions. Some of it turned out great. Some of it turned like shit. But we figured it out. So it's possible. But you also got to teach your kids the right things. Teach them morals. Teach them good decision making. Lead by example, but you got to fucking engage, because they won't listen to you if you don't engage with them, like I told you many times until I'm blue in the face. And I'll leave this podcast with this. If we want our kids and the next generation to believe in us and follow what we want to do and take interest into what we think is deemed appropriate, we have to do our part and take interest into their stuff, their beliefs, and listen. While it might not make sense to us because we're adults, to them it does. We have to match their energy if we expect them to match ours, and vice versa. Otherwise, we're just going to get completely confused with each other, and nobody's going to listen to shit and do their own thing at the end of the day. And that's not what we want. So anyway, with that being said, tomorrow will be Sunday night football. So super excited. Episode is about, I think, close to an hour. Goodness gracious. Thank you for listening. If you stayed on this long, like I said, just listen to the other episodes. There's UFO stuff. I think on the next one, I will be going into some really cool conspiracy stuff that I kind of want to dive into again. I want to touch on Atlantis, the theories behind it, Pangea, and the civilizations that might or might not have existed back then. I want to touch on a little bit into some of the biblical stories as well. The book of Enoch, which is one of the forbidden books of the Bible. Why was it removed? The theories behind that. So next week's episode is going to be a little bit different. Like I said, I want to change it up on this podcast often. So tune in for next week. I'm going to post this up. I'm going to edit it tonight. Probably post on Monday. Share, subscribe, like. I will be promoting this particular episode to a lot of people on YouTube, so you're going to see this one a lot on your streams and everything else in between. So we're trying to get to 100 subscribers at least before the year is over, and then we'll go from there. As far as views, they are what they are right now. The Apple Podcast is looking good. Spotify is looking good. I wish people would leave comments, though, so we can start engaging. That way I'm not talking to myself the entire time. But anyway, I digress. In the meantime, be safe, be well, self-love, and God bless. Good night.